Hey there! Before we dive into today's episode, just a quick reminder, if you're looking for tools, inspiration, or training to multiply disciples right where you are, head over to newgenerations.network. You'll also find a link in our show notes to join the community and connect with others on the same journey. And don't forget, you can listen to the Movement series and all our podcasts wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, I'm Aila Tasse, and I'm honored to introduce this season of the Movement series. You're about to hear the story behind Cabbages in the Desert, a book that shares how God has moved in some of the most spiritually dry and difficult places on earth. These stories aren't just mine. They belong to a growing family of disciple makers who have said yes to Jesus in the face of real challenge and deep need. As you listen to each chapter being discussed, I hope you'll see that movements don't start with experts. They start with obedience. My prayer is that these episodes inspire you to believe that God can do something extraordinary right where you are.
Have you ever, stumbled upon an idea that just completely flips your perspective? Something so different it makes you rethink your whole mission. That feeling when you realize, okay, the usual way, it's okay, but it just wasn't built for this kind of impact. Welcome to The Deep Dive. We're your shortcut to getting informed. And today we're kicking off something special, the Movement series. It's a deep dive into some truly transformative ways people are sharing important messages, how movements actually start, and maybe more importantly, how they keep going. Today we're digging into excerpts from a really fascinating book, Cabbages in the Desert, specifically chapter 6 called The Disciple-Making Journey. It's by Dr. Aila Tasse, that's pronounced Aila Tasse. And this book, it's not just theory. It digs into how a major shift in thinking led to this amazing organic growth in disciples and churches, even in really tough places. So our goal for you today, to unpack the practical steps of this journey, the stuff that can actually be repeated. You'll get insights into a way of doing things that puts relationships and natural growth first, way ahead of the traditional models. It's all about figuring out how those cabbages in the desert moments happen, seeing life bloom where you least expect it.
Yeah, and it's helpful to know where Dr. Tasse was coming from. He saw that a lot of traditional evangelism, well-intentioned, often resulted in fairly shallow conversions, not deep discipleship. Think about big events, they draw crowds, sure. But often, people were there for practical help, maybe, and lacked that personal connection needed for real spiritual growth.
Right.
So this disciple-making journey, it was kind of his response, a pathway not just to belief, but to, real multiplying spiritual movements.
Okay, so let's dive into chapter 6 then, this journey. Dr. Tasse presents it not like a strict list, step 1, step 2, but something more fluid. It's not just about getting someone to say yes, it's about this ongoing multiplication, a cycle, really.
Exactly. That's the key takeaway. It's not linear. You don't just tick boxes. It's interconnected. It's dynamic. And it pulls heavily from, what we see Jesus doing and how the early church operated. It takes people from that very first contact all the way to being part of communities that sustain themselves and multiply. Like growing something alive, not building a structure.
And right at the foundation, the absolute starting point for everything else is prayer. Dr. Tasse really hammers this home. Prayer isn't just like a nice thing to do. It's the power source. There's a quote from Adu, one of the leaders mentioned, who says, "We learned that we first needed to start with prayer, which can open things that wouldn't open any other way." What does that tell us about how they view prayer?
It's a crucial difference. Albert, another leader in the book, he talks about prayer not as a ritual you perform, but as a lifestyle, a deeply held belief. It's believing God genuinely hears and responds, and that you're bringing him into his own work as an active partner.
Right, not just asking for help, but involving him.
Exactly. It's the constant fuel. It acknowledges, look, we can't do this with just human effort or smart ideas, and it's both personal prayer and praying together as a group, both seen as, essential, non-negotiable for anything to last.
And working right alongside that prayer foundation is the idea of teams. This isn't meant to be a solo mission. We see that pattern in the Bible, don't we? Jesus sending disciples out 2 by 2.
Yeah.
Matthew 10, Luke 9, Luke 10.
Mm-hmm. And Paul, his journeys always involved others. Barnabas, Silas, Timothy.
Mm-hmm.
Never just him alone. So for people working in these challenging, maybe even dangerous places, what kind of practical support do these teams offer? Why are they so important for resilience?
Oh, the book makes it clear they're absolutely vital for actually sticking with it. They provide that mutual support, encouragement, and they allow different gifts to work together. Like Paul's drive and Barnabas's encouragement, they complemented each other.
Yeah.
That team dynamic makes people braver in tough spots.
Yeah.
And it helps prevent burnout, which is so common when people try to do this stuff alone. It's built for lasting power, accountability, keeping the vision clear, making sure the work doesn't just start, but keeps going and multiplies. Okay, foundation laid, prayer and teams. Intentional, resilient, but then how do you actually start? How do you connect with people authentically? Which brings us to this idea of creative engagement, often starting with access ministry. And this is where it gets really interesting, because it often means not leading with the spiritual stuff right away.
Why does Tasse say that meeting real, tangible needs first actually opens a better door for the message later?
Yeah, it's a powerful insight. You don't start with the sermon, you start by serving. The book gives loads of examples: medical camps, disaster relief, development projects.
Like literacy programs.
Exactly, literacy programs that actually weave in discipleship, or veterinarian training, getting fresh vegetables to remote areas, even just giving out basic farming tools like hoes.
Simple things.
Sometimes very simple. But they aren't just programs to tick off a list. They're strategic ways to build real trust. They break down barriers, they kind of surprise people. When you meet a need they actually have, you earn the chance to talk about deeper things. The spiritual conversation becomes invited, not forced. That really shifts the whole dynamic, doesn't it? It's not just do a project, leave. It's about sticking around, building relationships, being genuinely helpful. But is there a risk? How do they avoid it feeling, manipulative or just becoming another program?
That's a really important question. And it leads to what they call the Shema lifestyle. It's about genuinely showing love and, godliness in just your everyday life, how you interact with people.
Okay.
So it involves naturally, carefully sharing stories of what God's done in your life, offering to pray for people about their practical problems, things that make people curious. The key is it has to be real, authentic, not a trick, but just living out your faith genuinely. That opens doors without being pushy or fake.
And that connects so clearly to Jesus' stories, right? The lost coin, the lost sheep. This idea of actively going out to find people where they are, even if it's hard or dangerous, not just waiting for them to show up. It says their lives matter.
Exactly. It's proactive.
So once you're engaging, serving, living authentically, there's this crucial next step, finding the person of peace. The poppy.
Yes, the person of peace, a foundational concept in these movements.
So we know they're receptive, but what does Dr. Tasse say makes them so strategically important, especially in communities that might be resistant?
It goes beyond just finding someone friendly. The book paints a picture of a poppy as someone who's genuinely asking spiritual questions.
Yeah.
Right. And crucially, they often have some standing, some influence in their own circle. And they're hospitable, willing to open their home or network.
Like Cornelius in Acts 10, welcoming Peter, or Lydia in Acts 16.
Precisely. Those are great biblical examples. And there are modern stories, too, like Margaret in the book connecting with a woman on a bus who then opens up her whole village for these Discovery Bible studies.
So they're not just welcoming, they're connectors. What makes that connection function so effectively?
That's the strategic genius. Tasse points out that the poppy brings instant social credibility, their existing relationships, their influence. It helps bypass the natural suspicion towards an outsider. They act as a vital cultural bridge.
So the disciple maker builds trust with the poppy first.
Yes. You build that relationship, earn their trust. Then the person of peace, who already has that local standing, introduces you to their family, their friends, their community. They're basically vouching for you, opening up a whole network in a way that feels natural and respects how that community works.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then at the absolute core of this journey, the engine driving the transformation is the Discovery Bible Study, or DBS. But this isn't your typical Bible study group, is it? It's described almost as a pathway into faith, something people start even before they'd call themselves believers. What's the key difference? Why is it so powerful?
It's revolutionary, really. It shifts from someone teaching you truth to empowering you and the group to discover it yourselves directly from the text, and crucially, to figure out how to apply it.
So it's facilitator-led, not preacher-led.
Yeah, exactly. The facilitator asks open-ended questions. Simple but profound questions like, what did you learn about God here? What does it say about people, about yourself? Okay, what are you going to obey based on this? And who are you going to share this with?
Wow, obedience and sharing built right in from the start.
Right, and that's the insight. When people discover truth for themselves and commit right away to obey it and pass it on, the whole thing grows organically. It scales in a way that just listening to teaching rarely does. It makes people active participants, active multipliers from day one. Plus, there's accountability, checking in on how last week's obedience went. That drives real change.
That focus on discovery and doing, it seems perfect for, say, oral learners or cultures where lectures aren't the norm.
Definitely. And the book talks about using oral storytelling for those who can't read, telling the story multiple times, having people retell it, making it super accessible.
Yeah.
It's also incredibly smart, culturally speaking, especially when engaging people from other faith backgrounds. Instead of hitting them immediately with complex theology that might create barriers.
Which could just shut down the conversation.
Right. They often start strategically with stories from the very beginning creation, Genesis 1, Genesis 3, then key Old Testament stories showing God's character or need. Then they move towards Jesus, maybe through John's Gospel, like John 1 or John 14.6.
So it builds a foundation first.
Yes. It lets people grasp the big picture of God and humanity's story and then discover Jesus' identity and significance within that story more organically. It avoids unnecessary arguments. The aim isn't just conversion in the shallow sense, but, as they put it, to introduce them to Jesus so they learn to be his followers.
It really emphasizes the journey, the relationship, not just a single decision point. Okay, so as people are discovering, obeying, sharing, coming to faith, what happens next? How does this group evolve?
Well, the book describes a very natural development. As the DBS group grows more people, more obedience, and as a good number come to faith and are baptized, it starts to transition. It becomes what they term a DMM church, disciple-making movement church. But the key here is a radical rethinking of what church even means.
That's a huge point because most people picture a building, a formal service. How is church different in this model?
It's defined by its functions, not its form or structure. Are they doing the core things? Learning God's word, obeying it, sharing their faith, baptizing new believers, breaking bread together, praying.
The essential activities.
Exactly. If those functions are happening, that's church. It's described as a living organism and the DBS method. That remains the heartbeat, driving ongoing growth and discipleship within that church community. This makes it incredibly flexible. It works for nomads. It works in places where buildings would be impossible or dangerous. It ensures the movement can thrive anywhere.
And the ultimate goal isn't just one church or even a few churches. It's multiplication, right? That seems embedded in the whole process.
Absolutely. Multiplication is the DNA. Disciples making disciples who make more disciples. Churches starting churches that start more churches.
It's designed to spread.
Precisely. And that organic spread requires constantly developing new leaders from within those groups. The focus stays on simple obedience to God's word and growing spiritually. The whole approach is built for rapid, self-fueling growth across generations. It doesn't depend on outside experts or tons of money. That's the real Cabbages in the desert. Picture abundant life, reproducing itself, flourishing in unlikely spots, all through this deeply relational, reproducible way.
So we've walked through the disciple-making journey from Dr. Aila Tasse's book. We've seen how focusing on relationships, culturally smart discovery, and organic multiplication really transformed communities. It's quite a reminder that amazing growth can sprout even in the toughest, most seemingly barren places just by getting back to some core principles.
Yeah, this deep dive for the Movement series really shows that simple, faithful obedience, real relationships, and maybe crucially empowering ordinary people to find and share truth themselves. They can spark movements way beyond what the more traditional resource-heavy methods often achieve. It really underscores adapting how you share the message, prioritizing discovery, and building multiplication in from the very beginning.
So thinking about all this, what desert might be in your own life or your community, that place that seems barren, where growth feels impossible? Could God be inviting you to cultivate something there, trusting him for unexpected cabbages? What small, ordinary step, done with prayer and intentionality, might just spark an extraordinary movement right where you are? Thanks for joining us for the Movement series on the Deep Dive. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep discovering.
Thank you for joining us for this journey through Cabbages in the desert. It means so much to me that you've taken time to listen, to reflect, and to lean into what God is doing through disciple-making movements. If these stories have stirred your heart, I want to encourage you, this isn't just a story from far away. This is an invitation. The same God who moved in the desert can move in your city, your community, your network. To get connected and take your next step, visit www.newgenerations.network. You don't need a title or a platform, just a willing heart.
Thanks for listening to the Movement series. To find more episodes and explore tools that help you multiply disciples, visit newgenerations.network. And be sure to check the show notes or our bio for a link to join the community. We'd love to connect with you. Finally, subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. See you next time.